Welcome to Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. My name is Richard Miller. I'm one of the hosts based here in the UK, and my colleague, co-host is Dr. Luke Gledall, the man who introduced Hendos to Saskatoon and currently resides in Calgary, Alberta. How are you doing today, Luke?
Brilliant. I'm doing really well. I really like the idea of me introducing Henderson's relish for Saskatoon. I think that's something I could put on my epitaph. And I like the idea of me in a bar in Saskatoon paying a bit more for our beer than I expected, because I found beer a little bit more pricey than I thought it would be in Saskatoon. And drunkenly talking with a new friend and then being like, and then just drunkenly slopping out a bottle of Henderson's relish. And
this is the real stuff.
Yeah, just putting it on everyone's plates of food in the pub and eatery that I'd be in.
Excellent. Well, yeah. I mean, that's how else would you introduce it? You got to start with a small crowd, then the word of mouth builds.
Maybe I could Trojan horse it, like, instead of replacing Worcestershire sauce, I could just replace it with Henderson's relish, and then people be like, "Oh, I like this Henderson's relish. Sorry, this Worcestershire sauce." And they'd be like, "It isn't Worcestershire sauce. It's actually Henderson's relish,"
which is a vegan alternative.
It is indeed. There's no. Is it fish that kind of get harmed in making of Worcestershire sauce?
It's maybe anchovies. I think fermented.
Terrible.
It's delicious stuff. Both of them are tremendous sauces. I think there's room in this world for both.
Hot takes from Richie Miller.
Hot takes
on today's Different Gravy.
So I believe before we get into breaking who's.
Oh yeah, I just have a bit of thank you for the prompt, Rich. I do have a bit of personal news. So I do often, I don't know if you have a challenge, Rich, but I feel like maybe your family's a little bit supportive than they are of mine. Bless, I love you all, my family. I love you very much, but you clearly don't want to pull your finger out and listen to my podcast. Anyway, so I was having a conversation with my eldest brother, Andy, the other week, and he said, "You know what? How can I listen to this podcast?" And I said, Well, Andy, it's on all the great podcast platforms. It's on Spotify, it's on iTunes, it's on Acast. What am I missing here, Rich? What else are we on?
Ooh, Tune In.
Yeah, another good one.
Yeah, Pocket Casts.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much everywhere that folks can get podcasts. You can.
So here's the funny thing was that, but maybe not all of them. So my eldest brother Andy said, "Can I listen to you on SoundCloud?" And I said, "I don't think so." And I think he'd also gone to try and see if we were on SoundCloud, which we're not. And I found that quite interesting, Rich, because, SoundCloud is quite good, but also SoundCloud is the real home of some of these great mumble rappers. And I was wondering as to whether that was the reason, why it was, why Andy loves his SoundCloud. That he loves not only listening to some top podcasts, but also catching up with the latest mumblecore rappers hailing from the States with their latest mixtapes. So to make him feel at home, I've actually I've managed to source a rare recording that's not even on SoundCloud yet. It's actually the hit single from Lukey Pump, At the Gang.
Oh, and this will help. This will ease his transition across.
Exactly. That's the whole mentality. Yeah, that's the whole thing. So yeah, I've managed to source a clip of it, which I've shared with you, Rich. So if you could do the honors,
I will do the honors
to Lukey Pump's At the Gang.
At the Gang. Ooh. Yeah. Lukey Pump. Yeah. At the Gang. At the gang. Got a lot of love for the big man. Even take the time to press his full name. Ooh, yep, I love Big Dave's never lame. Watch him take the big chance, take the blame. Shut stuff at Kosovo, it's a shame. At the gang.
What a treat.
Yeah, so I thought that would help the transition for my eldest brother to listen to this podcast if, like I said, a bit of mumblecore classic rap. And also Wednesday themed as well, about everyone's favourites at the New You.
Oh wow! timely, because I think the big man might be, feeling a little bit forgotten at this point in time. So nice for that to come out and hopefully reach his ears. I'll be looking out for any future releases from Lukey Pump. Beautiful stuff. So moving along to next up.
Breaking hoo-hoos.
Breaking hoo-hoos. So we obviously had the game midweek with Derby County, which we'll get into in detail. But other than that, the other big bit of news was that Fernando Forestieri's injury seems to be worse than we originally thought.
Mm-hmm. Yes, apparently it's something a bit more than just the casual tweaking of his knee, and don't think there's any great time frame from what I saw from when Monk was interviewed midweek about that as to when we'll see him next. I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, this is it's a shame you have players who are injured. It's maybe not the biggest shame when it's a player you're not really playing as much and you're not missing hugely.
Yeah.
Like Nando. I don't know how to kind of react to that news, but I'm not. In a weird way, I mean, do you ever think this, Rich, in kind of previous seasons? Like, it's almost sometimes been a bit of a crass blessing that Forestieri has been injured, because I don't have to see him be out of form and be moody, and maybe he's not going to do anything. It's a shame that we've lost a player. But as people can kind of tell from our podcasts and our musings on Fernando Forestieri, we're kind of beyond the last chance saloon with him. And so, I don't know, maybe there's more juice we can get out of him for the rest of his kind of season. But it just feels all too familiar that either there's a lengthy ban, there's an injury, or in a bit of a colloquial sense, he's got a bit of a face on.
Yes, there just always seems to be something else rumbling along. I mean, even when he's sort of come back, he's the one guy on the pitch not celebrating the goal or something. That there just always seems to be some modicum of attention seeking or drama and rumbling on behind the scenes. And the for too long now, really, the negatives of all that kind of noise and drama that goes along with Forestieri have outweighed any of the positives of him being a player on the pitch for us. And I think we'll obviously talk in great detail about today, but nobody's ever completely lost in this game. There still are roots back, and I would love it if Forestieri came back and started playing anywhere near like the player we had 2-3 years ago. But that
wouldn't we all? But it's looking very much like that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
The horse has bolted a fair amount of time ago in this one.
Exactly. Yeah. I suppose I'm just sort of, as you say, we've been fairly negative in our outlook. It's not to say, sometimes you do get the feeling that certain people who comment on football matches are sat there hoping to be proved right, rather than there was even somebody that texted in today, and this is betting's a different thing, but somebody texted in at half time today and said to John Pearson, I had us down for a 2-0 win, so I'm disappointed. And it's like you shouldn't be, if you're a Sheffield Wednesday fan, you should not be disappointed at being 4-0 up at half time. If you are, you need a serious look at yourself and your relationship with betting. But you also get that way, people with their hot takes, they're so set in. So the fact that Jordan Rhodes has turned things around is something I'm really pleased about, rather than licking my wounds and going, oh, well, we said a couple of weeks ago he's really looks like a lost cause. I'm not sat here going like, well, people are going to think I'm wrong, so I don't want Jordan Rhodes to play well. I'm chuffed to bits he's contributing. And I similarly would be chuffed to bits if Fernando Forestieri manages to have a kind of come to Jesus moment and figures out he should actually play football rather than wandering around like a mardy child. That would be tremendous. But as you say, it would be another sort of miracle if that happens, because it feels a million miles away right now, and at the moment it's not a huge loss to not have him as part of the team. Let's talk about the game with Derby. I wrote down, with the thudding inevitability of the Tory majority on Friday, Wednesday, Sheffield Wednesday drew away at Derby again on Wednesday night, because it feels like one of those Groundhog Day games where we seem to go there, play pretty well, generally get an early lead, and then at some point something happens and Derby equalise. And that might be confirmation bias on my part, but that feels like a very familiar story at Pride Park.
Well, is the stat something like we haven't won away at Pride Park since, I think, 2004 is the stat. So yeah, it has been a long time since we got anything there. It has been pretty bad as a hunting ground for us.
Yeah.
And they just seem to be, I mean, they're a team who've been consistently one of the usually top 6 kind of teams within the championship who, for numerous different reasons, they've almost had a kind of Leeds United hoodoo on promotion. You know, they kind of treat it. What is something I heard about something else? I'm going to really just commandeer from. I think I heard this from Jesus and Mero the other day. But basically, they're like promotion. Derby with promotion are a bit like cats with water.
Okay,
you know, they need it, but they don't take to it very well at all.
Yes.
And so they've haven't been a very good side in previous years consistently. Maybe they've had a few blips. But especially moments when they've had blips, they've never been a team we can particularly take advantage of away at Pride Park. We've had a few victories at home. We've also had a few games where we really should have been at home as well, and we've really lost out. And also, we've had a fair few games away at Pride Park where we should have won, and we didn't get anything, or we got a point. And this is another entry in that particularly long logbook.
And
I didn't get to watch this game.
Okay.
I did watch the extended highlights today, actually. Just have been so busy with work and other commitments recently. I understood you watched the entire game, Rich.
Yeah. I think, unfortunately, a fairly familiar tale as the season goes. We played very, very well in the first half and created plenty of good chances. Second half, naturally, there was a bit of a rebalancing. I mean, it's hard to put across really just how dominant we looked. We were playing at a different pace and playing a very different game to Derby County in that first half, and we were just having our way by and large. I mean, pretty much everything we wanted to do, we were able to do. Sadly, apart from putting the ball in the back of the net. I'm just sort of looking. So, I mean, we ended up with 12 shots each, but the vast majority of ours happened in that first half. I think we had about 9 or 10 of those shots in the first half. Fletcher having the best of it. Obviously, Fletcher was the one who scored our goal. After some suicidal passing around at the back from Derby. That is one of those things. At the moment, every team in the Championship seems to try and be clever and play it around at the back. And not many of them are very good at it, funnily enough.
Yeah, no.
And I do think we've largely been very good at profiting from that. But this was a howler. Forsyth flicked the ball, so he was heading back to. Oh, you saw the goal. So I'm describing it like you hadn't seen it previously, but he's heading back towards his goal and just blindly passes the ball pretty tamely across the middle of his defence. And funnily enough, we were a bit brighter to it, and Bannon read it very well. And played the pass instantly into Fletcher, which was a really great piece of play. Fletcher took it first time, so they had absolutely no chance to recover from a pretty drastic error on their part. Second half, things really turned around. Part of it was, I think, we there's a natural sort of stepping off. I think particularly away from home. So we weren't quite as attacking, but I think more than that, Derby made adjustments. And I don't know what happened to the referee, because he was letting quite a lot go in the first half, and it was a good kind of rough and tumble game, an enjoyable competitive clash. And then second half, he really got very, very whistle happy, and in particular got very whistle happy with regards to Sheffield Wednesday. There was a lot of rolling around and moaning and whining, and almost all of it was rewarded. just some of them things were really silly. I think at one point Chris Martin got a foul against Barry Bannon. Like somehow Barry Bannon managed to move that just lumbering chunk of marble that is Chris Martin. It was silly stuff, but the ref gobbled it up, and then that kind of all added up to their penalty, which felt particularly undeserved. They hadn't built the pressure. I don't think
that was. I don't even want to say soft. I was going to firstly say it was a horrendously soft decision. It wasn't even soft. It was never a foul. It was actually a foul against Adebayo.
Yeah.
From what I see and what I think you see, and I think what every seemingly Sheffield Wednesday fan, and I don't know, like what, maybe 70-80% of the Derby fans, I don't know how you could ever say that was a penalty.
Yeah, he sort of, it was like a judo or a wrestling move, He grabbed his arm, sort of held it in his armpit as he tumbled to the ground. And somehow that meant that Adebayo had fouled him rather than the other way around. I mean, it was like a judo.
Yeah. Completely.
Crazy. And it's frustrating because we have talked about Adebayo maybe getting things wrong in the past, but he was in exactly where he needed to be. Like, he was in control of that situation. And really, without fouling him, there was no way that Marriott was going to be able to get to the ball because Adebayo had read it right. But somehow the ref, gave them a penalty and gave Adebayo a yellow card, and Martin took the penalty very well. But I think we were just sickened, really, by the fact it had been conceded, and we never really picked ourselves up again after that. There wasn't long left, to be fair, but that last 10 minutes, it was pretty difficult for us to rouse ourselves. But we did push. We did try and make things happen, and that meant we left some gaps, and that's when Adebayo took one for the team on his single yellow and got a second yellow card and was sent off.
What do you think of the disciplinary record, seeing as I think I saw a stat the other day, which was, I think this is true, is on the Second Tier Podcast Twitter account. So they said this I think this was Friday night, so it would have been, or Friday day, it would have been prior to the games we had today. The most fouls committed in the championship was Jordan Hugel on 45. Second with 44 was Stephen Fletcher, who, as we've kind of said, is close to getting a fifth yellow card. And I think a fifth is probably Sam Hutchinson with 41 fouls. So Sam Hutchinson, as we said, is taking a yellow. He's got his 10 yellow cards, so he's serving a 2-match ban, which is why he missed out today. And then obviously on top of that, hilariously, the revolving door is suspension of right back for the first team right back. Palmer comes back today, but then obviously Adebayo, who's been deputising, and someone who I kind of hoped would be dropped anyway for Palmer when he came back. We didn't really have a choice since Adebayo picked up, like you said, 2 yellows and a red.
Yeah.
I was looking at those yellows. The first one I thought was the yellow. The second one, I didn't really see much in it as a second yellow.
He hip checked him on the halfway line when he clearly wasn't winning that race. I thought it was cynical. I thought it was a yellow.
Which, I mean, if we're going by conviction, I think if the referee thought that the penalty, which was after a first yellow, I don't know, but would a second yellow, even though it's becoming a red, not a straight red, would that have become double jeopardy?
Yeah, I don't really know that rule inside out, to be honest. It seems to be one that's open to a fair bit of interpretation, because there definitely have been people sent off. Yeah, I don't know.
The rule for double jeopardy is a 1999 American neo-noir eventual crime thriller film in which Ashley Judd is a woman who's wrongfully imprisoned for murder, who, while eluding her parole, tracks down her husband who had framed her. So basically it's the same thing, basically.
Well, isn't Double Jeopardy also a quiz show where...
Surround and Jeopardy, yes. Yeah.
Where the quiz host just asks normal questions and you answer with the answer.
We just call that quiz show or something, I think.
Yeah. Decried as just being another quiz show. Double Jeopardy only ran for 3 episodes. I mean, we've talked about silly fouls. Being a feature,
a hallmark of this Wednesday side of 1920 season.
I think, and we keep getting described as as a physical team, which reminds me of when we were managed by Gary Megson. We were often described as bullies or overly physical. We are certainly not what we were under Megson. I think that team, right? And we took a kind of pride. The identity of the team was that we were big and strong, and you had to win the fight against us to win a football match against us.
So that's the interesting thing, because I think I've heard that from opposing fans about Wednesday, and I think they're completely way off. Like, so I don't think we're a team. I don't think we're like a Billy Davies, Gary Megson side. We're not a team who plays with gamesmanship and wins those niggling free kicks. There's not a lot of gamesmanship. It's not kind of there's not really a kind of overt chance to kind of cuckold the referee.
As everyone says, yes.
Classic term, cuckolding the referee. You get their wife on the pitch, and then you have sex with his wife. I'm so sorry.
Oh dear.
We're not looking to con the referee, basically. So that's a better word than con.
No, definitely not.
But we are clumsy.
I think Hutchinson is a big part of that. I'm surprised he's on that list as he is.
Surprised he's not top.
Yeah. Because I would say a feature of Hutchinson's game is silly free kicks around the box.
If Hutchinson had less yellow cards and hadn't got to the 5 yellow cards, then but still had the fouls, then he could be gunning for that number 1 spot alongside, Jordan Hugill, who is he is a bit of a dirty player, is Jordan Hugill.
Yeah. Well, I think you look at somebody like so it's natural for Fletcher. I suppose Hugill is in a similar bag. It's natural for big, strong centre forwards to pick up fouls because it's almost almost every ball forward is a 50-50 between them.
I mean, that's the funny thing, though. Like, I mean, I think they kind of said that during the game today, the commentary team about Nuyu. The player we played the brilliant Lukey Pump hit single from. Early on in the show, and basically John Pearson said he's not that type of player, and he isn't.
No, but he never gets a foul given for him, and he gets lots of fouls given against him. Sure. Even though he's not that type of player.
Yeah, and then we talked about this. This is the rule of the big man, which is even in us losing to QPR early on in the season, I think there were a few instances of Hugill looking for some stuff, and that's just you're never going to get it because you're a big player. Yeah. So the referee is going to be like, you're a big, tall man. You can take a whole bunch of kicking. You'll be fine. You never get that advantage.
No. You're absolutely right. I think the other thing is, so we have those silly fouls around our box, but I do think one of the features of the team under Monk, and certainly when we're playing well, we're doing a really good job of taking the ball from the opposition in their half. A bit like the kind of Klopp model, although very, very different in many ways. Yes. But a big strength of that Liverpool sort of the gen pressing is you win the ball in their half, so you don't need to build your attack from your own half. And I think we've done a really good job at that. I think Fletcher's particularly good at that. We've seen more of it from Reach. Harris is good at it as well. But when you're trying to do that, you're asking players who are not defenders to do tackling. And again, you're going to pick up fouls because they're going to get it wrong sometimes. It's just a natural, I think, trying to play on that front, best foot forward style defending. It's just going to happen. We certainly have picked up when we've got 44 yellow cards and 3 red cards so far, which makes us the fourth, worst defenders in the league. The only team that's anywhere near us in the league, because all the other teams, as you might imagine, are lowly teams. So Barnsley and Wigan are the worst defenders. Barnsley have got 54 yellow cards so far this season. Wigan, who are second bottom, have 46 yellow cards and 3 red cards. And then the only one that's comparable to us, Middlesbrough, is the team that's below us. 4 red cards for Middlesbrough. But they're all in the bottom 5, those teams. QPR are the only team that's anywhere near us table-wise. And they are the third worst defending team. So it is interesting. I think, as I say, it seems to be something that's crept in. We did have a game against Brentford where conspicuously we didn't do it, so maybe it is something we have a bit more of a choice over than it seems. Interestingly, Fisher at Preston has joined Hutch on 10 yellow cards, so I don't know where he was in the rankings of dirtiest bugger, but
Fisher at Preston is a bit of a dirty bugger, as they say, isn't he?
Yes,
very much.
So you watched it. You said you watched the sort of extended replay of the game.
The highlights, yeah. I didn't go for the full thing.
Yeah,
I thought initially about doing it, but then it kind of the charm of drawing 1-1 away at Derby kind of loses its real appeal. You kind of get that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what did you make of that kind of overview?
Just it felt very typical of kind of Wednesday of previous, and maybe this one was more symptomatic of some of the more frustrating games of the season. We take the lead and then we kind of spurn that away. We don't seem to have the teeth a lot of the time, in contrast with today's performance. And maybe also Middlesbrough as well. We don't really have that kind of clinical, ruthless finishing touch. But we didn't really seem to really carve anything else that seemed to be any chances that seemed warranted. It seemed to be a lot of us. We do really have a great knack of, prior to today, which we'll get onto, Jordan Rhodes and other strikers kind of have this, this heading technique where they're not quite ready for the ball. So they kind of head it up in the air, which looks like they've kind of been shot. A little bit.
Yes.
It's like they've been shot with a ball and they kind of like jolt back and then just kind of head it over the bar very comfortably. So there's a couple of chances like that, but there was nothing really outside of the real kind of moment of ingenuity and capitalising some poor Derby defending for Fletcher's finish, which was lovely. Also noted then that game that Fletcher notched up to 11 goals a season, which is his current Wednesday record. At the time, which is pretty astonishing. And but outside of that, we did that. But Derby didn't look particularly threatening. Like that patch of Derby kind of turning up the gears, turning up the heat in the second half. They didn't look much.
It didn't amount to much. It didn't.
No.
And we'd handled it very well. It really, the only difference was that the ref handed them a penalty that they didn't deserve. It's very frustrating that happened again. It is. You're right. I mean, it feels a bit of a well-worn road for us that we put in these fairly decent performances, and I'd like to see statistics, and maybe before we talk again, I'll put some work in and put it together. But there was some talk during the Derby game that we're the team that's been in the lead for more game time than any other team in the league.
Interesting.
Which is an interesting position to be in, and I think all too often we haven't had the rewards for leading for so long. And generally we seem to have eradicated those silly late errors, at least the last 2 or 3 games. And it's arguable whether this was an error or whether it was. It's certainly an error, but it's more of an error from the referee rather than the defenders.
Exactly.
So it's frustrating again to not get the 3 points from it, but I think more and more the picture is that we're an absolute handful for anybody. There's very few teams that we've played that you think they were much better than us, and if we played them again and again, they'd probably beat us more often than we beat them. I think most teams in this league are pretty beatable. We seem to have a pretty dependable squad. There's some flex in that squad as well. So we've lost away at Derby more often than not. So a draw at Derby is not to be sniffed at, especially when you combine it with the week we've had. But it doesn't stop it being disappointing when for 70 minutes of a football match we were winning the game. It then feels hard to come away with just a 1-1. So we should probably whisk ourselves along to today's match.
And what did you think about the? I guess because I was kind of taken away from the full analysis and full watching of Derby midweek. What did you think about the lineup for this game against Forest?
Well, obviously we had to make 2 changes based on the the disciplinary issues that we talked about. So Odebajo had to come out, and the obvious replacement was Liam Palmer, and Hutchinson had to come out, and again the obvious replacement was not Dominic Arthur, was Massimo Luongo. So I think those two changes made sense. I mean, what's been fascinating is, we've sort of touched on it, but seeing Jordan Rhodes come back into the mix has been really interesting. I'll talk a little bit when we're sort of assessing the game at the end of it about how I sort of feel that's been able to work. But I think by and large, I mean, people moan about not having two up front and not being ambitious enough. You can't argue that with the lineup that we've played against Derby and Nottingham Forest on the road back to back.
No,
it's very forthright, very front foot forward. I feel at the moment Luongo is defensively a pretty strong character. He seems to. I'd be reserved in saying he's as good as Hutchinson. I think maybe he's not quite as good as Hutchinson, but it's certainly not a gaping hole left in that regard when Luongo comes in, and he offers quite a lot more going forward by and large.
I mean, we have been waiting for Luongo to kind of step up and take that first team place for itself, right?
Yes, and maybe it wasn't the sort of performance that absolutely was going to seize it today. That's fair enough to say, I think. What did you think when you saw the team? So, as you say, you didn't particularly engage with the midweek match. So, were you a bit surprised?
It was, yes. I was a little bit surprised to see, Jordan Rhodes back. I didn't know if it was more a cameo from. I know he played against Derby, but I didn't really have a good insight to how he played. So I was a little bit surprised. I thought he would have gone with Fletcher and Nuyu up top. The midfield four I like a lot. I think that's probably on paper my preferred midfield.
I would agree. I would tend to agree. Yeah.
I mean, if we can maybe you bring in a different character, and then if we could get 4-3-3 working a bit more. Maybe you have that, and then you maybe you might have Bannon, Hutch, and Luongo in the middle three, and then you push Harris and Reach up top with Fletcher. But I haven't really seen a lot, especially from that that mentality we have with the wingers really hugging the touchline and really getting down the sides. It creating a lot of gap in the 4-3-3 from Fletcher. So. But if we're doing a 4-4-2, that midfield four, should say, is pretty much what I think. I was glad to see Palmer back. So the back four looked good. I don't besmirch Lee's doing as well as he has. So I'm glad for that partnership with him and Iorfa to continue in the middle of the park. Maybe I was just a little bit surprised with Rhodes, but I don't know. Weirdly, I kind of felt... You kind of get the impression, even maybe I'm just colouring back because... spoiler alert, Rhodes scores a hat-trick in this game. Thinking about, did you kind of get that feeling about when, I think it was a 4-4-2, when we were away against Villa, was it last season or the season before? The one where me and you watched it in New York. Yeah. And basically the goal, that was a really nice goal scored by Rhodes, was completely overshadowed by the fact that Reach just in the first minute of the game just absolutely smashed in a screamer.
Yeah.
And did you kind of get that feel about the starting lineup of seeing Rhodes that maybe sometimes maybe something like this can happen from a starting berth for Jordan Rhodes?
Yes. I mean, that quite possibly is the last goal he scored for Wednesday, I would have thought.
I think so. I think it was a rare kind of moment. This was prior to, because last season he was away at Norwich for the entire season. I think he scored in pre-season, but obviously that doesn't count, but competitive goal, yeah. And apparently this is the last time, is it the last time he scored for Wednesday in 336 days or something like that?
Something like that, yeah, that makes sense.
Which is an incredible stat. I was surprised, but I think there can be, as much as we've probably written the man off numerous times, I wonder if sometimes it's really purely like, given enough game time, you can have this kind of broken clock situation. If he starts 24 games, there's one time he's going to score.
Yeah. I certainly don't. I'm not coming away from this game expecting goals every game from Jordan Rhodes.
No. But to kind of get onto that, I mean, we can expect more from Jordan Rhodes, and we should expect more from Jordan Rhodes as a player, which is why it's just been such a turn up after such a dry spell. And then to get, even if he just scored one, I'd be surprised. And then at the point he got a brace, and then he copped it off with a hat trick. It is absolutely astonishing. But
yeah, I think
I think the thing I'm trying to say is sometimes there is that mentality. I think sometimes you get with football. Sometimes you just feel like a bit of energy in the air that this is this is the game which he can put in a performance, albeit how rare it is.
Well, it's a ground we like, and this is now a team that's had a pretty good week. I mean, I'm sure there was a bit of wound licking went on, but after the Derby draw, but a good win against a team above us in the table in Brentford, rolled into then. The first half against Derby was really a very, very good performance. We looked unplayable. We just didn't take the chances, and then I think again today that led into another unplayable half of football from us. We just looked deadly, and the best thing was we took our chances today. That's what I was going to say is what I would be fascinated to hear. We've had several of these games where we've had a 1-goal lead and it's come back to bite us on the bum that we didn't get another. But I would think by and large, once we've got 2 goals, I would have thought we've won every game from that position. Because I think that's the thing is we seem to start games very, very well. The first 10 minutes we quite often rack up 2 or 3 chances and a corner or 2. And when we score in that position, then obviously that builds to probably another 10 minutes of dominating the game. When you have 10 minutes of rattling the opposition, and then that turns into 10 minutes of them kind of seizing back control, then things get a bit more iffy. But I would think, if we get that first goal and then build another goal on top of it, either early in the first half or early in the second half or already in the first half, I would think by and large we probably nearly always win from that position. Well, I would think we always win from that position, I would say. We seem to be pretty good at managing the game from that point. But it's sadly been too often, it's been a big if that we get that second, despite the chances we make. What Jordan Rhodes being anything like Jordan Rhodes gives us, hopefully, is more of a chance to grab that second goal. Hopefully. But we were straight at it today, weren't we? We were right out of the gates. Scored in the 9th minute. Essentially just a punt down the field from Dawson. Fletcher kind of won the header, sort of bounced off his back of his head and his shoulder, ran through to Jordan Rhodes, and Jordan Rhodes hit it first time with his left foot, like a guy that has not. He's like a guy who's on a scoring run of maybe 5 or 6 games. He hit it with all the certainty of Fletcher's goal against Derby. He scored it like a guy that's playing the football of his life.
It was insane. It's what a finish from nowhere. I said, that was such a lovely cushion flick on from Fletcher. Yeah, and Jordan rolls back the years
with his left foot.
I know. So here's my notes. I said, do we have a chant for Jordan Rhodes yet? Did we ever find one in the first place? Are the fans scrambling through their archived hymn sheets on Google Docs as we speak? He's
always had the na 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 na. He's had the Ryan Lowe song, I think, from pretty much from the outset.
Okay.
Because we were genuinely very pleased to have got him. When we got him, we've got Jordan Rhodes. Felt triumphant.
Yeah, it felt like a long and arduous, Rhodes hunt.
Yeah,
and finally we got him. We bagged our man.
The big game of Jordan Rhodes. But we kept at it, and not too long after that, the 13th minute, Adam Reach put a sumptuous ball into the middle of the penalty area, and Jordan Rhodes nodded it home again, like a man in the form of his life.
It was completely beautiful. And did you notice, obviously, previous to that, Reach had a chance, which he should have snapped one at.
He did, yeah, absolutely.
And he did a really clumsy layoff. You could see Fletcher kind of lamenting and kind of slapping his thigh at the, decision making from Reach. But then, he got cleared up the field. He got cycled back. I think he got to Luongo. He just kind of slipped it off. Reach went back to the byline. And that's when he just curved in that lovely guided curling cross.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
And as incredible as the first finish was, I mean, you probably don't need to really do much as a striker if you get such a good service and such a good cross. But I mean, to give credit to Jordan, like, he still has to score that one. And just a lovely caressing, guiding header. Didn't need to do much. And, the defense and the keeper are completely at 6s and 7s for that one.
And hopefully Reach, it's going to help him build his confidence as well, because I think that you're right, that chance where he laid it off to Fletcher pretty poorly with his right foot when he should have shot then, and he kind of he bottled it, didn't he, basically? and that speaks to a guy that is struggling a little bit for confidence. He did have an audacious attempt where he just sort of let the ball bounce over his shoulder and flicked a sight unseen volley towards the far post at one point as well.
Yeah, so it's almost like it's seen motivation from the rebirth of Jordan Rhodes, of JR6 as I've called him here, and it just swung his left leg through one. It nearly went in. It was pretty close. It was
very, very close. But that's a weird thing, isn't it? With confidence, is you that is less scary because the odds are against it going in. So, like, getting it on target would be incredible and scoring would be unbelievable. So it's an easier shot to hit than the one where you're 1-on-1 with the goalkeeper, which is, that's more pressureful because you're expected to do better with that. You're expected to beat. Mm-hmm. So it's a weird thing that happens in particularly in football. I think it happens in other sports, but it happens particularly in football, that you probably take the chance from 30 yards out where you've got no chance of scoring, but you try and equivocate when you're 1-on-1 with the goalkeeper because that's harder mentally. It's a harder thing to do. The other thing I wrote down in terms of possibilities to get more goals, I thought there was a pretty obvious handball at about the 25-26 minute mark where there was kind of a scramble across, and I think it was Dawson seemed to flick the ball away from Harris. Would have had a tap in, and he flicked the ball away with his hands. But the commentators didn't say anything. But it was like 2 or 3 players ended up on the floor, and Dawson did some pretty ham-fisted acting while he flicked the ball away with his arm. And I thought that should have been a penalty, really. But anyway, we didn't need it. Because the 37th minute we had a corner that went into the box, wasn't properly cleared, sort of bounced around a fair bit. It looked like a set piece routine that actually worked to an extent, because we've sent it to the back post and Palmer volleyed it back in, which seemed to really cause a lot of issues. But the long and short of it was Jordan Rhodes flicks an overhead kick into the far corner and completed his perfect hat-trick.
Yes. And it's just incredible. My notes say, what world do we live in? Maybe I can slide into Alison Bree's DMs. Maybe I can fly. And I said, oh, wait, do not try or to convince any fellow Wednesdayites to jump off any buildings this weekend following this. And they said, is Rhodes on acid? Is he being controlled by a young FIFA streamer? Or maybe it's a little bit of A and a little bit of B as well. It's absolutely astonishing.
It was lovely to see. And everybody was so chuffed for him.
I think the thing that's just it's such a classy finish. Obviously, it's acrobatic. It's quite something. It's not one of the more kind of overhead kicks where someone is really going for it. No, and they kind of go around with a real amount of. It's not quite the Wayne Rooney overhead kick against Man City, where the ball comes in whipping at a pace, and a player with the class and talent of Wayne Rooney's stature, or at least he can do when he's on form, just meets it so sweetly and with such a pace. It was more of the kind of lackadaisical. The interesting thing was he felt this is what's needed to score. Yeah, it almost kind of pinned into a sense which is this is what I need to do to score, and he just did it. And it just as a great finish as it was, it just seemed incredibly casual from him as well.
Yeah. And actually, weirdly, we did miss out another chance because Fletcher had an overhead kick saved as well, which was fairly decent.
He had a lovely kind of swivel
yeah,
as well, which I thought the great thing about that was I noticed a lot in that first half that there was a lot of combination on the left from Harris and Fox. So it basically seemed like we had the first bite of the cherry with Harris going to see whether he can take on his man, do some step overs, burn the fullback for pace. If he didn't, he would just, roll the ball back for Fox to whip in a really lovely cross. And that was one of the ones that came from. It came over, lovely control from Fletcher, little chest, and then swiveled kind of finish. And, kind of a little bit unfortunate he didn't get a goal from that one.
Yeah, definitely. Although, thankfully, we weren't done with the first half yet. And he did grab his goal in the end. Again, another set piece. That they didn't manage to clear. Some lovely work from Tom Lees. Kind of control and swivel and a decent looking shot. And as the defence and goalkeeper sort of bundled themselves into the back of their own net, Fletcher just poked it in the open corner and picked up his 12th goal of the season, which means he's already having his best season ever. Or equaled his best season ever in terms of goals.
So I think for league goals, I think you're correct. I did notice, actually. So his best season overall, all competitions in the 07-08 season for Hibernian, he got 14 that year. Which was obviously, Fletcher is a very, very young man around the age of 19, 20 at the time of that one. Yeah. And but now we're barely halfway through the season. Literally next week against Bristol will be the 23rd league game of the season. I don't think Fletcher scored any in any of the... Did he score? He didn't score in the League Cup game we had, right?
No, I don't think so.
Who did we play in the League Cup game? I can't remember at all.
Oh, it happened, didn't it?
Anyway, it did happen. I think we did crash out in a very typical Wednesday style. Was it Everton?
It was Everton.
We lost to Everton. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just. I will pull it up rather than because I know the frustration of listening to people do this on podcasts. So we started with Nuiu and Winall. Fletcher came on.
Right. Okay.
Came on with 20 minutes left for Nuiu. So
really, it's completely pure of pretty much his appearances, pretty much, in the league, and 22 games played in the league. And he's got 12 goals. He's got 6 in the last... Is it 6 in the last 5 or something like this?
It's just incredible, his record.
It is just incredible. It really is.
He's actually... So, I don't know how to say his name, apologies. So, Easy, or Eze, the guy at...
Eze, QPR.
Is supposedly the best player in the league at the moment. But second behind him is Stephen Fletcher.
Is this thanks to the people at Who Scored?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
He's it's just been outstanding. So I'm just looking at so he obviously got 1 goal today, got 1 goal against Derby, 2 against Brentford, 2 against Charlton. So that puts him he's on 6 from those 4. If you add in his goal against West Brom, he's on 7 from 6 as well. So it's a pretty rosy time to be Stephen Fletcher.
Stephen Kenneth Fletcher, yeah.
Yes. But it's nice that he got a goal.
What's the goal frequency, Kenneth Fletcher?
Oh, lovely stuff. But it's odd to be looking at a half where we scored 4 goals and legitimately saying, we could easily have had another 2 or 3 on top of that and it wouldn't have flattered us. We battered them.
Completely.
They had nothing at all to offer us.
The thing I loved was the fact that, we had that intense start. We were pressing, we're full of energy. But the fact that, you look at the first goal, and I think this happened a couple of times, my kind of only real tactical observation, I thought, was I loved the fact that we pressed into the half to allow Dawson to just kick it in from a free kick.
Yeah.
And that was it. So Dawson with the second assist for the first goal, hit it on, and then little cushion down from Fletcher, and then the swivel and finish from Jordan. And
that straight as an arrow kick deep into their half from Dawson, it's become a weapon for us. because we've had several chances off the back of it. Because Fletcher should have scored that one against Brentford as well that was just straight down the middle. It's I thought Dawson had a really good game today. And it was interesting that it's the first time Westwood has ever been on the bench. For me, he's never been further away from being considered the first choice for that goalkeeper's jersey, because Dawson looks like a young man that's kind of coming into his own, and that back five were really working hard for each other. The fact we kept a clean sheet as well, I think, is a big thing for them, because that's always... When you win, it doesn't really matter. If you win 2-1 or 2-0, it's kind of academic, unless you're one of those back five where that's what you want to come away with. First and foremost is a clean sheet. That's what you kind of mark your progress against. And it was interesting, Gary Monk, they sort of mentioned the clean sheet as the first clean sheet in 6 or something like that, or 8 games maybe even. And he got a big cheesy grin on his face and saying, I'm a defender. That's the first thing I look for. They're wired differently, those chaps at the back, and that would have been massive for them. They all played fantastically well and really didn't give Forest a sniff. It's worth noting. So one thing that we've seen a few times, I don't know about Cash generally, but Cash is... he's a winger first and foremost. He wears number 11. He's generally a winger. And a few teams have done this against Harris. They put a winger up against him because they just want to keep up with him at the very least. Defensively, it's neither here nor there. It's just let's not let him get runs in behind that we can't catch him on. So we've seen this 4 or 5 times where they put somebody who's a sprinter, really, right, first and foremost. And we've talked about different formations, and 4-3-3 is a great formation. Every formation kind of has its time and its place. But 4-3-3 is very reliant. The fullbacks really rely on other players helping them. And Amiobi and Carvalho just could not be bothered doing anything in the way of chasing back. They played wherever it felt like and completely left their fullbacks wide open. So it meant Cash had an absolute job on his hand. You talked about Fox and Harris combining really well. A lot of our play also went down the right-hand side. Reach had his best game probably of the season, and a big part of that was those two fullbacks were just left to fend for themselves. A shocking bit of, I don't know what their game plan was. It seems sort of audacious that they thought they were going to completely outplay us, because nobody's really done that. So to not account for the fact that we play so much of our game gets played down the wings and not cover your fullbacks just seems bizarre. People have talked. There's not about this being not a particularly strong championship. The championship exists in a weird paradox where everybody seems to think that the year that we're in is not that good, and the next year will be much, much better. And this year is no different. People just don't think it's but genuinely, I think it's a combination of, we seem to be a pretty decent side, and I do really think Gary Monk is a gifted manager. But that, in addition to the fact that a lot of these teams just don't seem that good. Forest and Derby, neither of them are anything special. And you look at the squads as well, and it's like, what were they kind of hoping? They've got kind of old warhorse at the back in Dawson. Worrell seems to mainly just be a thug. Lewis Graben can be a very good striker on his day. I'd say probably he's the equivalent of Fletcher, but it's just a kind of mix and a muddle of some past their prime Premier League players and some never-beens. And that seems to be what half the squads are made up of.
Yeah, I guess in a different way, I think that probably to other fans, I think Wednesday's team probably feels very similar.
Probably looks the same. I know. Well, I would maybe say, I would probably include us in some ways. Yes.
So but I see your point. I think there's always, Monk said it well. I think everybody says this. It's not a particularly new observation, but any team who are on the right level, who play with the right intensity, can win games in this league. But I think you've basically seen a team who, in Forest, who I think probably a little bit of similarities to Wednesday, and probably like, not that I know a great deal about them, but I think from just looking at the table, they're a team who have been around the top six. They've got a similar kind of goals for, goals against than Wednesday. They're probably going to have times where they flattered themselves and times where they flatter to deceive,
Yeah. It looks like a team that's maybe built to do a lot of attacking, but really looks kind of very thin outside of that. I don't know. It's just an interesting observation. I mean, I'm just looking at the league, and we're up there. There's a little group of us now between kind of Swansea and Preston. There's a bit of a group that are kind of looking like the playoff pack. There's still room for other clubs to get there as well. But West Brom and Leeds at the moment are way off in the distance. But I think I just sort of looked at it and thought, I've been looking at the league thinking, and we've done this a few times, just looking at where do we sit in this? Where do we stand in it? What are our expectations of the season? We weren't expecting great things at the start of the season, and then we picked up some good results, and we were thinking maybe things could be better than that. But I am starting to feel, I wouldn't be surprised if we are the third or fourth best team in this league on the balance of things.
And that's the funny thing is, I think the thing I really like about that is the fact that we're a team who are very much under the radar. We're never particularly a team that the media gets, alongside, maybe outside of the kind of Carvajal kind of prime time. We're not really a team that like the media kind of really cream over or kind of recognize. No.
And Carlos courted that as well, didn't he? So I don't think Mark he's not wired that way. He's not a kind of preening wannabe superstar like Carlos was.
So yeah,
it's just intriguing. I mean,
but I guess that's the funny thing was, I mean, we look at this Forest team, and it's a good point you made. Was like, what are we? It's a team that we probably feared a bit more before the kickoff, and then when it started getting into it, it's like there's not really much there to kind of on this occasion, on this showing, to really be fearful of.
No, and then squad-wise, today was interesting because in some ways we've got I think Monk sort of talks about the squad as being unbalanced. I don't know massively what that means. Probably just we've got too many strikers, really. But outside of that, we've got Fernando Forestieri out injured. We've talked about whether the ups and downs, the ins and outs of that. But we've got Fernando Forestieri out injured. Most clubs in the league, that would be a pretty big loss. Yeah. We've got today was the start of a suspension for 2 games for Sam Hutchinson. Any team in the league would miss Sam Hutchinson, and we didn't bat an eyelid. We've got somebody just as good to slip in, really. Different, but just as good. And then we lose Moses Adebayo, who, for all the ins and outs of it, he's an experienced Championship right back, and he played in the previous 3 games. And again, he drops out, and Palmer comes back in and looked ridiculously comfortable, looked fantastic. There's not many squads in the league that could just do that. It's quite an achievement to then come out of that with a 4-0 win, kind of get all the business done before half time and have a second half off, essentially. Today was a really good day.
It was.
I don't want to get too carried away.
It really is completely flat for the second half. There is so little to talk about. I barely made any notes. And you said you've... did you watch any of the second half through highlights, or were you listening, or
there was nothing on the highlights from the second half? So,
yeah. I wanted to kind of paint just a little bit of a picture of, the second team, the team that we're actually kind of there today, but we didn't really see, which is Nottingham Forest. Yes. They did have a little bit of a mini spell. Not to the point where, like, I'd say that, like, it gave me any degree of kittens. But from my notes. So here's something I want to kind of go over just from like some kind of shot by shot kind of log that I've got here. So the 22nd minute, this was after we were 2-0 up. So it's a space from basically the 22nd minute for about 10 minutes to about the 31st minute. And then basically then, that's when Rhodes on the 37th minute, as he said, got his perfect hat trick. And that's when, the game, it was done. It was done.
Yeah.
Before we just stick the knife in even more with Stephen Fletcher at the near post. So the 22nd minute, Bannon did quite well to defend conceding free kick. I thought that was quite good. And then we had a slightly scary moment, but Iorfa kind of managed to slice that clear. 26th-minute Dawson was alert to tip over a shot that they had, which I don't know if it maybe might have just hit the crossbar, but obviously you're in those moments where keepers are just like hardwired to think this is a potential threat, so I'll just deal with this.
Yeah.
Did you notice in the 27th minutes, I made this note, Forest fans claim a penalty because they have the ball in the penalty area and they are losing.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you see that penalty claim? Because I watched it twice. After I watched the game, I did flip back and basically watched the majority of the first half again because I could see the goals and leave it playing while I was doing other things. And I watched it twice and I couldn't see anything. Even John Pearson was saying, I can't see what they're appealing about.
No, I didn't see anything either. I think fans are not what to go by in those situations because fans claim for everything, and players are even less reliable because they kick the ball straight out of play and claim for it. So it's hard to get the to figure out exactly what they were reacting to.
And just to kind of wrap this up, 28th minute, we had some great work from Iorfa to cover and clear. That was good. And then the 30th minute, not that the game, I think this would have changed. I think it would have changed the complexion maybe a little bit, but nothing really concerned us. Ben Watson with an absolute massive miss.
Oh, yes. That was such an awful miss.
And did you also happen to see potentially a call for handball on Tom Lee's build-up as well?
Oh, yes, I saw that too.
Yeah. But what an absolute stinker of a miss from Ben Watson. That could have
quite an achievement to get it quite so high over the bar from that.
He really cleared that bar really pretty well. I think maybe the NFL are calling for a kicker.
Yeah.
Mr. Ben Watson can step up to hoof it between some large posts.
Bend the leg.
And I also said, just prior to that, I said, really under the cosh from Forest now. Credit for them for their delusional abilities of thinking they're still in this.
They did. I mean, obviously, you're right. They did have a spell. It's a bit unfair to say they didn't do anything, but they came out at the start of the second half and had 5 minutes of trying a bit, but it didn't amount to very much at all.
True. I mean, a bit like my analogy about the cuckolded ref. The referee is also the second person in this relationship. You completely see it in the byline. A similar thing with the Wednesday and Forest. Forest were the second team that were in this, but they were completely absent for most of the game. And then we get on to the second half, and I've literally made no notes. Nothing really happened. We talked prior to the podcast about how, John Pearson was making the note about how come Forest weren't actually kind of pushing. Yeah. I guess the weird thing was they played with quite an intensity, Forest, I felt. I felt they played with a fair intensity, but I think it worked for us so well because we just kept up with the pace and we were just there to them every time. And I think them playing at a pace to us was something we could handle. Us playing at a pace was something that they couldn't quite get a grip on.
Right, yeah, that's an interesting observation. I think second half, and John Pearson was being very pragmatic in his coverage of the second half and correct in what he was saying. But when you're 4-0 up at half time, you have absolutely no pressure on you to continue to attack. There's no reason attacking. There's always probably, I mean, again, all games are a risk and reward. Football, risk and reward. So attacking is how many men do we commit forward to try and make this attack happen? And that leaves us gaps in behind. And when you're 4-0 up, there's no point taking any of those risks. I know fans moan about taking the foot off the pedal, blah, blah, blah. These are professional sports people. This is a very high stakes game. I personally, as a Sheffield Wednesday fan, nil in the second half is great for me.
Oh yeah, totally.
4-0 in the first half is the whole game. If I'm watching, I don't know, Man City beating up on some, Burnley or something, I'm probably as a fan going, oh, I hope in the second half they keep playing. But I know why they're not doing it.
Sure.
It's not too stretching. So what you're relying on then, if to make the second half watchable or interesting in any way, is Forest maybe making some changes, really going for it, adding on a second striker, or maybe chucking Dawson up top, or trying to do something to change the feel, and then we contribute to the second half in keeping them honest by trying to pick the gaps that they are leaving open.
I guess that was interesting. So I went on Twitter afterwards and I wanted to see, not that it's a great barometer of human beings and fandom and perspectives on the world. It is purely just Twitter. But I wanted to see what the Forest fans were saying. So, I thought they weren't great, Forest, but I thought you would have credited the win in this situation purely down to Wednesday were that good today.
Yeah.
We were that good and we were that clinical. And I think we've seen that from other teams. Other teams maybe being good, but I think the gloss is kind of added as the fact that they've been very clinical and they've scored a really good goal. And that was us today, completely.
Yeah, absolutely. So but was that what you were finding on Twitter or not really?
No, they were all very much like, we were terrible. There were a few fans who said one person said Wednesday were very good today. And then someone then commented with, no, we were very shit. And then the initial person said, well, we were shit and they were very good.
There's a lot of Wednesday fans that appeared when we got to Wembley that one time. And they seem to think we have some sort of God-given right to win every game 4-5-0. Do you think Forest must have legions of those? Because they won the European Cup,
Yeah, and
I'm sure
there was the I did love the footage on Twitter of all the Forest fans leaving at half time. I was surprised there were so many available, so many still there in the second half. It seemed like they really were just a lot of them just sitting it through. But it very much felt like the rats leaving the sinking ship. As they saunter off over Trent Bridge or whatever it is, down Brian Clough Way, while they, think about once this small provincial team was a European heavyweight. Thanks to a real freak of a manager in numerous different ways.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was interesting. It was really interesting. I really regret. I would like to think that me and you are fans who can take sometimes a little bit the biased glasses off and say this team were really good today, or they were unfortunate, or they were actually really good. Or
you don't lose 4-0 by just not being particularly good yourself. That is complete myopia, isn't it? That is that's tunnel vision, and you only see one side.
And there was an interesting debate on Twitter from the Forest fans about the manager who said, was asked after the game about, would you have made any changes should you have made any changes at half time? And he said, well, 3 isn't really enough to kind of change. He's limited by the kind of substitute. I thought that was interesting. And then someone else was saying, what's it going to be like if you're a player who comes on in the second half? What are you going to change? It's not a marginal thing which you can tweak. You can shame 1 or 2 players and then make a big change. Someone who's going to create a point, and that momentum then is going to be something you can turn around the second. There's literally nothing you can do. I thought I agree with John Pearson. I thought they could have pushed for something. I would hate to think if we were on
the other foot.
Yeah.
The fact that they didn't make any changes at half time. I've only ever left a game early once, so I probably wouldn't have left early. But that would have me looking at how difficult it would be to get out the end of the row, to be honest, because that is surrender. That is a white flag. I know you're saying, you're absolutely right. 4-0 is pretty much as dead and buried as you get. 4-0 at half time.
I mean, it really summed it up with some of the Twitter fans are talking about, and I think it was on the commentary, we talked about him earlier in the game, the Forest player, Matty Cash. You saw him insolently boot the ball into the crowd like a child.
Yeah.
So clearly I thought it was funny from your observations about matching him in a foot race. Clearly he was a frustrated man.
Yeah.
I don't think you should really be, thundering it into the crowd.
Not even trying. Just, it's a bit pathetic, really. I'd be really, really angry really. 4-0 would make me angry anyway, obviously, but not even giving it. Stranger things have happened. The man who scored our hat-trick today played in a 4-4 game. I mean, it was a sort of joust about back and forth 4-4, but 4-4 does happen. And we scored 4 goals and a half. Why couldn't they?
Yeah, exactly.
I just think it's a complete... I think it's pathetic not to try, really.
No, and you want to see that, and you want to think that there's still something to get out of every game. I would be pretty disgusted, I guess, if I was a Wednesday fan.
And there's 26,000 people there who'd paid 28,000 in total, but 2,000 Wednesday fans. So 26,000 people have paid good money to see Nottingham Forest play, and for them essentially to take. Well, the first half they had off, and then the second half they went on holiday. Just pathetic.
Yeah.
Really?
And yet, do you know the funny thing was, I think I actually felt they looked a little bit more threatening playing at a slower pace.
Yeah.
Which was kind of weird. Anyway, there wasn't really much in the second half.
No.
I seem to remember one of them had a shot which kind of ricocheted Wythe off Lee's backside.
Good on. Lee's went off, did he? Was he injured or just to give him a bit of a rest?
Monk was saying that he had a bit of cramp.
Okay. I suppose he hadn't played very much football, and now he's played 3 games in a week, so fair enough. He looked, well, I'm cautious of the fact I only saw the first half, but he looked like he was really having a good game. Well, relatively. I thought Leeds looked like he had a really good game. No, I mean, obviously everybody had a good game when you win 4-0. It's claps and handshakes all round. Do we want to go through the player ratings? Do we want to
player ratings? Yeah, sure. Dawson. So I initially gave a 7 to, but actually from our conversation, I felt a grade to a 7.5. He didn't have a great deal to do apart from a couple of mild saves. His kicking was pretty decent, and got a first goal from his hoof, as I said, ? Excellent.
Yes, yeah. The reason I was saying I think he's sort of growing into it, the fact he's just, as a goalkeeper, the danger in games like this is you switch off because there's nothing for you to do by and large. But his positioning seemed to be really good a lot of times, and he nipped things in the bud because he was stood far enough forward and reacted quick enough. Situations didn't develop that could well have done, and probably would have done under Westwood, because Westwood is so hesitant to come off his line. The fact that Dawson was a bit more mobile and a bit more happier to sort of come out and deal with those things just meant things didn't get to that point of even being a question asked. And yeah, I think his kicking seems to be getting a lot more consistent, or it certainly has been the last few games. He's getting some really good distance on those kicks. So yeah, I think I'd be tempted to go sort of 7.5 maybe for him, but he didn't really have very much to do, so maybe that's a bit too generous. Liam Palmer.
I think I have the least notes for any player, I think, on the pitch than, apart from the substitutes, to Liam Palmer. I've given him a 7. I thought I just said decent overall.
Yeah, he obviously played a part in Fletcher's goal, or was it Rhodes' goal? I've really forgotten now, sorry. But yeah, he did his job. He was a willing sort of runner for Reach, and that meant Reach had the option to either go to him or cut inside and do things himself more often than not. So he contributed to Reach having a very good game, and maybe that's enough on a day like today. I thought similarly. I thought sort of moving along to Iorfa, I thought he didn't have a huge amount to do today either.
Well, interestingly, I actually thought Iorfa, I would give him a 7.5. We didn't have the game for him to get upset and go on a marauding adventure up the pitch.
No, we were too effective for that.
But I think he was a bit more kind of involved. I think that's probably that's often there's so much thing with players. Obviously, player ratings. Some players are just never involved that much to the point where they can actually do anything. So Palmer was the one who probably is the weakest, I'd probably say, out of the back 5. But he still had a part to play. But I felt like Iorfa, I said, jokes aside, some important defensive work, and he makes it look all so effortless.
He really does.
He's got that kind of. I feel like maybe the recent kind of performances of Lee's, I think Iorfa is better in his performances, but maybe sometimes it's about the stuff that you don't really need to see. And I felt maybe that today that was a bit more of it. Though he seemed to be a bit busier in doing some kind of covering work and a few clearances as well.
Yeah.
There's one where I think he kind of controlled it down on the clearance with a little kind of volley, and then just kind of ran on and kind of volleyed it out as well.
Yes,
volleyed it up the pitch, which was fantastic.
Yeah, there's still lovely little moments from him. He's a peach of a player. He's a Rolls Royce.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'm happy to go along with your suggestion now. Praise for Big Dom works for me.
Mm-hmm. And Lee's also, I've been a bit more generous than previous occasions. The 7.5, I said he was assured also. His derriere nearly got a goal for Forest. Bit of classy negative playmaking, but jokes aside, he got an assist for Fletcher as well.
Yeah.
His work helped, kind of brought in that fourth goal.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, he did really well. He looked very classy in that situation. I think the set pieces today were pretty solid all round. I mean, the fact we got two goals from them obviously makes you think they were pretty good. But it was a big part of Forest just feeling like they were on the ropes the whole time. So we'll move along to the left back, Morgan Fox, or Captain Fox Morgan, as we like to call him on this
Captain
podcast.
Fox Morgan, and also a promise from my brother that basically said if I give a good rating to Morgan Fox, he's not going to listen. So, sorry, Andy. You've got this far. If you have, it's a 7.5. I thought he was assured again. I thought he was great down the left. It's just a great work and a great foil down the left for Harris. Just getting forward and providing that option for passes. It's just fantastic. Some really great crosses and some good defensive work.
He just seemed to be seeing things very well today. Like it was just a tiny moment. Like nothing really stood out from it, and I don't know that it particularly went anywhere. But it was just a ball that broke to him, and he fizzed a really good, solid pass into Bannon. And it's just the sort of thing that I think early in his Wednesday career he would have struggled with, and he just did it very nonchalantly. It was a pressure situation, If it had gone to there was a couple of Forest players in quite close attendance, and so there was stakes there, but he just sort of fizzed this ball into Bannon, let us keep going forward in the move, and it was just done very matter of factly, and that was really nice to see. He's clearly a guy who's grown into his role, and he's growing in confidence, and I do think he's a decent crosser of the ball by and large. More often than not, we don't have a striker that wants to play in the box, which makes all of our crosses a bit questionable at times. But obviously, when we've got Jordan Rhodes playing, getting quality in the box is worth doing, because more often than not, he's going to make sure he's there. I'm not going to say score all the time, but he's going to make sure he's there to take those chances.
Or if not, he drags the play around and creates space for someone else to cause some damage. Well done, Captain Fox Morgan. Another fine performance. Mm-hmm.
Adam Reach.
Okay, going for the left. Was he left or was he right? He was right, wasn't he? Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm so used to thinking Harris is right wing, so forgive me for that one. 7.5 for Reach, probably one of his best performances in a while. Great assist for the one goal. Rhodes didn't, great assist for the one goal Rhodes didn't need on a plate for him to magic one up. Because it was a lovely serving. It was really, Reach got on his tops and tails, and he got one of those metal serving things. And we opened up the thing, which I need to figure out what it's called and then probably explain to the listeners. And
Cloche, the sort of metal, the silver bowl over the top of the sails. Yeah.
So Jeeves Reach opened up the cloche and said, "A chance is served, sir." And Bertie Jordan Worcester had a nice little snack on that one, didn't he?
He did. Gobbled it up.
That was lovely, and
don't mind if I do.
Reach was great today. I always want to see more of this Adam Reach, not the other Reach that. Not sure whether he should be starting or off the bench, and then sometimes is a bit ineffective as well. Yeah.
No, absolute treat today from Adam Reach. Very very pleasing, and that kind of another place where we've got some genuine competition, because we've got three fairly decent wingers to call on. It's a nice place to be. Action Massimo Longo.
Action Mass, I went for a 7, which is actually the lowest rating I've given a midfield player. But I felt he kept things ticking along and he had some good energy at times. So I'm happy to see him there. I'm happy to see him play. I think there's a little bit more to come from him than those performance like today.
Yeah,
I think.
It wasn't a huge one from him. I think he had a couple of things where it nearly worked. But I also do feel he's conscious when it's a 2 with Bannon. He is the one that has to hold himself back. Like, I think Luongo's natural inclination would be to kind of almost be a kind of attacking midfielder. I think that's his kind of nature, but he knows that Bannon is not the best when it comes to defending, and make sure he tactically sticks to where he needs to be, I think.
Yeah. Apparently that was the case when we bought Luongo. Apparently he was more of the season before the last one, before we signed him. So, God, what that would be now, that'd be the 17-18 season.
Yeah.
He was more of that attacking player, and apparently 18-19, he was a player who was asked to play a bit more of a defensive kind of holding role. So just putting his action in and about, his own
I think he's
defensive box.
I think he's really good at both roles.
I do too, which is the brilliant problem to have with a player like Massimo Longo, is when we signed him and brought him in and had a look at his talents, we popped the hood on Action Mass if he was like a transformer car or something like this. And under the hood, he's got a lot of characteristics to be both that defensive holding player that's really going to break things up and do a great job screening the back four, but also that player who can be more of the kind of attacking Kieran Lee and get in and around the box and kind of pop up with the ball. And we've seen that from some really great finishes. The 2 goals he scored have both been lovely, lovely finishes.
Absolutely.
So yeah, but I still like this. I still like this role for him.
Yeah, no, I think I don't need to. I'm not giving him an excuse, really. I think there's extra factors in him, maybe not shining quite so brightly as he's done in previous games. In a 3, he tends to be given a bit more free rein to just be a pain in the backside to defenders. But yeah, I think there was just, again, lots of little moments. He as you say, he just makes little things. He keeps the things ticking along. Yeah, great player. I think 7's fair. Didn't do anything showy or didn't do huge things to stand out today. Barry Bannon, Wee Baz.
Wee Baz, I thought the same as Action Mass, but just better. Like, he did keep things ticking along, but just, obviously he's the playmaker of any pairing or any kind of midfield centre mid setup that we have at the club. And he was spraying some balls around pretty well. Maybe there are other games where, he's probably maybe got a bit more of a kind of effect. But I think he did in a weird way. I can't seem to remember. There are situations which he's been involved with which have led to goals. So, but no kind of direct assists or goals for him today. But still a 7.5. Very good performance from Wee Baz.
I agree. I think, it's the free kicks. The corners more than free kicks, really. But they were good today. And sometimes when corners are good, it results in a nice clean header straight away.
You weren't also watching them and putting your 2 hands on your head in a different sense.
No, there was a different one today. There was a big wide arm one that they did a couple of times. But yeah, sometimes a good set piece just means it's not hard, not very easy to clear. And 2 goals came from Bannon corners. It just wasn't direct, but they were good enough to hang around and give us a chance to score. Harris
7.5, full of industry ideas and threat at all times. Some really lovely step overs and running, and maybe a little bit of a shame we didn't see any kind of major output from him, but he still had a kind of part to play, and really, really good. Just having it's kind of a bit like you were saying with Rhodes. It's like, if Rhodes is not playing well, then I guess hopefully you still think there's a benefit of playing Rhodes when we have done recently, that he is stretching players, stretching defense and moving people around. And for a similar kind of mentality of Harris, I think he's often just he's getting everyone's backs up on this time he was on the left side. I loved his combination work with Fox. Just to go back to, I think it made me seem like more of a positive for Fox that he was getting forward and working, but Harris was also working well with him as well. So I think that's another thing to add to the positives column. Really good. Just, yeah. I'd hate to think of a game we have where we don't have Kadeem Harris on the wing.
He's a gem. I really, big fan of that young man. I think you're right. I think we've mentioned Cash several times. He's one of their star players, and he didn't get anything going really. And a big part of that was the other thing that Harris did was he does his work going backwards. He's not a lazy player when it comes to the other side of the game, which is a huge thing to have as well. And not many wingers can say that about. It's a thing that goes unnoticed. He also maybe could have had a goal again today. There was a couple of opportunities that sort of dropped to him where
he bent one wide, didn't he? Which was quite nice.
His finishing, if his finishing could get like 5% better, he'd be a real goal threat. I think a pretty consistent goal threat. Anyway, there's a reason folks play for Sheffield Wednesday and not Liverpool or Man City. And if you have everything, you play for the biggest clubs in the world. So just one of those things. Things drop to him because he works hard.
Do we think though? I guess an interesting perspective is he's one of our consistently star performers up there with Burner, Iorfa. And, we talked about Iorfa being a player who's been, having Burnley batting their eyelashes at him. I mean, you could see, he is a sellable asset. Not that he's a player we ever want to sell, but surely he's a player who's, other teams must, notice him and notice the work that he's doing.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, it's not something we've heard outright, is it? But it wouldn't be a surprise at all. No, you're right. Then we go to the front two. Let's talk about Stephen Fletcher.
Thank you. I want to say, can we talk about Fletcher first? I want to give Fletcher an 8. Fletcher, a game where he scored and gets an assist and has some great overall play, and he isn't the star of the show. It's insane. And he's now on 12. He has 12 goals for the season. Yeah. And we're barely halfway. Next week is the halfway point for the season. Like I said earlier in the show, his career best season in all competitions is 14 in the 07-08 season at Hibernian. He's going to beat that with ease. I guess the interesting thing is, that's his standard. It feels like 11, 12 goals a season is his standard.
Right, yes. Yeah.
And, he's taken all that time that would have been a full season. He's done it in half a season. It's very productive.
The fact that Stephen Fletcher is playing so well allows us to play Jordan Rhodes and hopefully start to see the best of what's left of Jordan Rhodes. That's what I was going to say is we couldn't carry Jordan Rhodes with any other strike partner.
Interesting. Yeah.
But Stephen Fletcher at the moment is just so kind of all-encompassing in what he's doing. I think that's why that was the shame. Him and Atty playing together, we were getting less Stephen Fletcher. And when he plays with Rhodes, it doesn't actually affect Fletcher's game at all. Fletcher can just play how he plays. And we've seen that he's got goals alongside Rhodes, so it's not taking away from his goal threat. But we get the full effect of Fletcher, plus, hopefully, a guy that can pop up and grab the odd sort of scruffy goal when we need them. And those make a huge difference, because almost every game under Monk, with very few exceptions, we've been at the best team or at least a very competitive team in the game. And it's been about how many of our chances we've taken. And actually, we create quite a lot of chances for a team. We tend to get 15, 16 chances per game as a bare minimum. So having Fletcher do all the stuff he does really, really well, plus a midfield that can cope with all the work they have to get through. That's the downside of 4-4-2 is those two in midfield have to do a lot. But we've got players that are up to that task by and large. Yeah, it's clever. It's Munkenstein's Monster Mark II. And I just never saw it coming. In the same way we never saw Atty and Fletcher as a partnership. I never saw Rhodes sort of making his way back into the picture, but what allows it to happen is just how good Stephen Fletcher is at the moment. It'd be interesting to see if he drops off. Some players do that, don't they? Was it Darren Bent always used to score before Christmas and then got nothing the rest of the year?
Yeah.
It was like there was a bonus in his contract at like 10 goals or 15 goals, and then that was it. Yeah, another great performance from Stephen Fletcher.
Yeah.
And then Jordan Rhodes.
I can't give anything less than a 10 for that performance. It's a 10. It's a 10 out of 10. It's a perfect hat trick. And the thing I want to note as well was that it's not just like he has been a goal poacher who's been there at the right time to apply the right finish. He was the reason we won. And two of those goals were just completely down to him. That first one and the third one. It was only the second one where, Richie Jeeves turned up with a perfect bit of service. So the other two were just completely all down to Jordan Rhodes. And
does that make him Bertie Rhodes?
Bertie Rhodes. It's Bertie Rhodes. Yeah. There's also some good bits of play. Do you remember the bit in the first half where the ball kind of thundered through and he was kind of on a bit of an angle from the goal, couldn't really do much with it, so he played it against the defender and then shepherded it out for a corner kick?
Yes, yeah, that was a clever.
It was a lovely little mini cherry on top of this hat-trick Sunday that he's given us today. But the thing I want to say is, like, despite the good bits of play, you want to say he's a striker, and you paid him to score goals, and he did that with some real pizzazz and aplomb today.
Yeah. I think that's mainly what he did. I don't think he did huge amounts outside of the box, but if you do the job in the box, that's fine.
And finally, Rich, on Jordan Rhodes, I want to call this is the Antique Rhodes Show.
Lovely. Absolutely lovely.
So carrying on with that, we try to flog it, and by it I mean him. But then once discarded, we find some cash in the attic. He is money, and we may not to go on a bargain hunt for a new striker. A vintage Rhodes performance. Also, maybe, I'm not sure if I fully kind of got this well. You can edit this out if you want, Rich. I said he's Wednesday's Miss Havisham as well.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what a treat. Yeah, it was just fantastic. As you say, the first goal is just brilliant. It's out of nowhere. It's a flick on. You see it. You see it probably 20 times a game. What you don't see is the guy on the end of that. Well, one, gets on the end of it. He's read that ball through. And two, first time, left-footed shot, gives the keeper no chance to set himself, and it's right in the corner. That's incredible. That's a great finish.
It is.
And as you say, the third goal is in the same bracket because it's just really clever. It's a really inventive way to work the ball towards the goal. And again, right in the corner, as was his header. The reach ball in was fantastic. And
they're all in the corner.
All in the corner. But it's no given. I think that's the thing is Fletcher is brilliant at everything outside of the box. And this season he's been better in the box than he's looking like he's ever been in his career before. So that's a wonderful thing to have. But if we can add a box striker to that, it lets Fletcher do all of his great work outside and building play and winning headers that he shouldn't win and moving defenders around. And then if we've got someone, Johnny on the spot to nod those headers home and make things happen, that's a pretty formidable thing to line up against. It's very exciting. He's not going to score every game, but if he scores on roughly the same sort of knots that Fletcher's scoring, that's a lot of goals we're getting.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice position to be in, and I totally agree with your 10 out of 10. The subs went on for very long, so we should just whiz through them. Burner came on for Tom Lees.
I don't think I can give any of the substitutes any more than a 6.
Yeah,
they were fine.
They
didn't really have anything to do.
I heard Winnall had a couple of decent
chances. Yeah, Winnall actually kind of whipped one just wide. He killed one just wide, which was not quite nice. Maybe I could be generous enough to stretch to a 6.5 for him. But there wasn't really much doing from him, New and Burner in that place. But what do you have to do in that stage?
Yeah, of course. It's at that stage. It's just about providing enough of a threat to keep Forest on their toes, isn't it? That's all it comes down to, that second half. I remember Carlos talking about, I think it was Bristol City we played, and we were 2-0 up at half-time. And he said, they said, oh, were you really keen to go for that third goal? And he said, well, we needed to go for it to make them think we wanted a third goal. But which is a kind of odd, it's a kind of convoluted way to say it. But you kind of get exactly what he's saying, because it's like, even though we are sitting back a little bit more, we don't want them to think we're just giving up on attacking. And that's what that whole second half performance is, including all the subs. It meant Rhodes got a nice individual applause as well, which you always want to see for a hat-trick scorer.
I was glad he was taking... I mean, that was the interesting thing with the subs. I'm like, I hope we get to see Jordan come off just so he could get that rapturous applause.
Yeah.
You know, it's better than the stuff that you get even at the end, which was nice to see him get the match ball and go over and have a few applauds with the fans as well. Did
Forest fans applaud as well, or they were just too po-faced for that?
I think they were long left by the time. You know, I remember seeing the camera angle with the Wednesday fans. You know, at the City ground, you're kind of underneath on the lower tier. I don't know if you've been to the City ground. They do that really fun thing of putting you underneath the home fans, which I fucking love. Of course, I'm being sarcastic.
Pee thrown at you and
pee and coins and poo and all types of fun little treats. And no, but when the camera was that, they were long gone. Okay. You know, there's nobody sticking around for that.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I just wondered. It's one of those. I like those moments in that kind of football camaraderie thing, the football fraternity.
Yes. Yeah.
I like when everybody applauds off an injured player. I like when I don't want players to be injured, obviously, but. I'd love to see a few more of those moments in the season when somebody gets stretched off. But it's just I don't know, it slightly hairs on the back of your neck sort of moment where it's like, yeah, there's something a bit bigger at play here, and we're all part of a bigger thing, even though we're on opposing sides in this match. And when somebody scores a world-class goal or somebody gets substituted after an amazing appearance, those are sort of nice moments. But yeah, I suppose there wasn't enough of them left to make any dent in that. Well, yeah, what a game, what a tremendous game, and a very good week. Caps a brilliant week for the team.
And just to finish off, the last time Jordan Rhodes scored for Sheffield Wednesday, that was Saturday the 14th of April 2018. He was the singular goal scorer in the away win against Hull City, and that was during Jos Luhukay trying to salvage the season. And I think he did a fair shot at, he did a fair attempt at salvaging that season after the wheels falling off on the time of Carlos Carvajal.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's quite some time since that happened.
Here's hoping we're not waiting another year or whatever it is until the next goal from Jordan Rhodes.
Well, it doesn't feel like it after that, does it?
No.
Next up, we've got Bristol City.
Yes.
And another team that's kind of in the same playoff picture as us. So another interesting benchmark sort of game.
A team who seem to score a similar amount of goals that we have, but then conceded about 2 less. So a team who seem to be a bit kind of rocky in form. So hopefully we can really put in a decent performance and put a few goals past them to help kind of cement ourselves in the playoff positions going into the Christmas period.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, these are rare days. We just got to drink them in and enjoy them when they happen. So I'll bid you adieu, Luke, and have a good week.
Have a good one too, Rich.